When it comes to the border and security threats, Nigeria has had issues with insurgencies like Boko Haram, active in the northeastern part of the country bordering Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. This unsecured area was neglected and became a hotbed for jihadist groups to exploit. They claim the territory as their own. These criminals traffic weapons, drugs, and people across unpoliced borders. Terrorists continue to exploit porous border areas in order to damage innocent people's livelihood with impunity, kidnapping children and forcing their ideology of no Western education. The irony, these jihadists use weapons and vehicles created through science and Western education to terrorize people. Imagine the hypocrisy. Well, watch out for episode 19, Public Morality and National Psyche. The only Nigerian land border I have personally visited is the Lagos Seme border between Nigeria and Benin Republic. One thing stood out: chaos. I couldn't believe my eyes. A shared facility, tarred road, customs and police checkpoints, and that's it. Prior to going to Badagry, I had seen shows on National Geographic like How to Catch a Smuggler. There, borders had sniffer dogs, X-ray machines to scan trucks, and well laid out facility controlling both people and vehicles. Naturally, I was disappointed to see my country's border so porous. Honestly, the place looked less like an international crossing and more like an entrance to an Owambe party. Free for all, no control. I immediately understood why insurgencies thrived in the north. If Lagos as a mega city has such chaos as its border, how much worse is it in a sparsely populated northern area? Nigeria's land border totals about 447 kilometers with Benin, Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, plus about 853 kilometers of coastline, with roughly 84 official crossing points and an estimated 1,400 illegal routes. Porosity is the norm. Smugglers and militants move freely. They bring in illegal goods like rice and vehicles that undermines local economies. If you can't track what is coming in and going out, how will you make solid policy projections? Nigeria has a free movement pact with ECOWAS, but here's the problem. How do we know who is entering or leaving? Migrants should at least tender an international passport and get stamped at every entry point, even if no visa is required. I heard President Tinubu's Minister of Interior recently announcing fines for immigrants who overstay their visa. That is fine, but the bigger problem is the people entering without any visa at all, especially from Niger, Chad, and Cameroon. Don't get it twisted, I'm an advocate of Pan-Africanism and believe Africans should move freely within Africa. But free movements must come with control and accountability. The government occasionally clamps down on border, like in 2019 when President Buhari's administration closed land border to curb smuggling when the economy was in turmoil. In 2024, the Tinubu administration claimed to have launched an e-border surveillance system integrating Interpol's data and other national security database installed in 5 international airports. That's great, but let's be real. The main threat to our nation doesn't come from airports. They come through roads and porous borders. If I were president, I will build a border security zone in each of the 17 border states with physical barriers. Out of the 1,400 illegal routes, we will reduce it to 17 secure corridors. In fact, we will start a new tradition every year. We will launch Operation Gate Check, where the president visibly orders the closure of all border, and it will be monitored on 17 different screens at the State House as a sign of control and readiness. Each border state will see the 3-kilometer strip of land from the borderline inward to federal control, like a buffer zone. This 3-kilometer buffer zone will be equipped with watchtowers and army garrisons for protection. A wall or a fence like the US-Mexico model would deter casual crossing, but combined with remote surveillance, motion sensors, and drones, we could finally secure the 4,047-kilometer frontier with fences, troop, and high-tech monitors. Some people would say, oh, Enoch, you want to build the Great Wall of China. Now, a wall like the Great Wall of China might be far-fetched. It was built by forced labor, but the design currently in use in the US-Mexico border is achievable. This massive national project will create jobs while providing security and redistributing the population. At every crossing, we will build modern facilities with separate lanes for trucks, bus, cars, and pedestrians. Queues would be radically cut down. Think Zimbabwe's Beit Bridge border with South Africa or California's San Ysidro's border with Mexico. That is the level of efficiency and design we need. Well, for more details, let's dive into the maps. Starting from Lagos, we can see the Seme, Nigeria border here. You can see how chaotic these borders are. I counted 9 illegal points of entry in the 10-kilometer border entering Lagos alone. You see the problem? Here's the controversial part. My approach will be to block all those entries and enforce a 3-kilometer buffer rule ceded to the federal government control. Now let's see the extent of a 3-kilometer buffer zone. So towns like Ganme, Akwakwa, Akoko, and Komi got to go. Those border communities within the 3-kilometer buffer would have to be resettled. It sounds cruel, but hey, we are trying to solve a problem here. You can have a state like Lagos and Ogun State having a blood border line in the interior. Just take a look at this. That is understandable, but not at the international land border line. In some cases, houses are literally on the borderline. That is unacceptable. Yes, there will be resistance, lawsuits will come, but would you rather fight lawsuits today or fight terrorism tomorrow? And what in God's name is Seme Krate joint border? We are building a new facility for Nigeria on the line, and we will tell the Benin Republic government to clear houses so close to the border. Countries bounding Nigeria will be encouraged to adopt buffer zones as well and man the border, because when this new sheriff comes to town, whatever trade or benefit that has been there for smugglers living so close to the border will be erased. Now let's move to the boundary line in Ogun State. I have to say, I was shocked at how long it stretches, about 182 kilometers. For most of that stretch, you actually see a natural buffer with green vegetation running along the Igodi River. And I like that. A clean, natural 3 kilometers greenery that already feels like a ready-made border zone. Imagine 406 outposts across the 4,047 kilometer line, each with 3 to 10 troops, thermal cameras, radio weapons, medical supply, and armored vehicles. Their role will be continuous observation, short interdiction, alarm, and local reporting. Imagine 52 company bases, one every 80 kilometers, with about 100 to 150 troops, masterminding UAV surveillance capabilities and serve as a logistic ops for the outpost. Imagine 17 brigade level command centers, one per border state. So Lagos with 10 kilometers of border would have one HQ, one company base, and several outposts. Ogun State with 182 kilometers of border will host 2 or 3 company bases, 18 outposts, and one HQ. Each post would overlap in sight line with the next, leaving no blind spots. Now let's continue with the maps. Moving further along, you start to see the border getting blurred. Parts in the forest, clearly not secured. Here we can see an established border post in Ogun State, and the urban sprawl so close to the line. A buffer has to be created and that borderland secured. Just look at this development. Does this look like an international border?
I'm not allowed to cross this road because this is the town of Stansted, Canada. On the other side of the street is Derby Line, USA, and the border between the two countries runs right down this, Rue Canusa. For the local residents, that can be inconvenient.
Today you cannot cross over the line and visit your neighbors like years ago. If you want to cross, you have to report at customs. You know, I used to cross every day. Now I probably cross once a week because I come down to the post office over here.
While I was setting up my camera here, the police turned up, lights flashing, to move along those bikers you saw earlier, who were admiring the view from the other side of the road. It all seemed in good spirits, but they had crossed the border.
Canada may have streets crossing the border, but even there, everything is clearly marked and enforced. Nigeria, with a history of insurgency, cannot afford such carelessness. I counted hundreds of illegal entry points from satellite imagery in Ogun State alone. The Igodi axis especially is wide open, and I've heard that place is so notorious for smuggling, and that is unacceptable. How can we claim to secure a nation when the gateway is this porous? It is simple. Towns within the 3-kilometer radius must be resettled in partnership with the state government. Yes, it will cause pushbacks, But better to deal with the relocation now than to fund endless insecurity later. A porous border drains the national budget and fuels instability. People may argue, oh, but Enoch, this part of the border has no insurgency. And that is exactly why we must act fast to prevent future outbreaks before they happen. Moving upward into Oyo State and then along the Kwara boundary, we see the River Okra marking a clear line between nations. Yeah, the demarcation is obvious and the 3-kilometer buffer zone could easily take hold, following the Okra into Niger State and further into Kebbi. The natural greenery provide a ready-made shield that we would exploit. But as we continue into Sokoto, Katsina, Jigawa, Yobe, Borno and Adamawa, our front line against insurgency, this story shifts. The borders are clearly drawn on the map. Yes, but on the ground, they are anything but secured. What looks neat on a map does not stop smugglers, insurgents or traffickers from walking straight through. By enforcing the 3-kilometer buffer, resettling border towns and installing a layered defense of outposts, bases and HQs, Nigeria's borders will transform from porous bush paths into controlled arteries of trade and security. It is not just about security. This national project would also create jobs and spur local economies. And finally, we can stop saying Nigeria is the giant of Africa as a slogan and start proving it with action. Because if we don't secure the edge of our country, how do we ever protect the earth? I've done my research, but for security reasons, I won't be showing the current security map. Some things are best left unsaid. After all, the goal here isn't to expose vulnerability, it is to show how we can finally fix them.
Attacks have intensified, putting security forces under pressure. Nigeria's defense chief is calling for further measures.
Can we start thinking of fencing our borders? We have 1,500 kilometers with Niger Republic, 1,900 kilometers with Cameroon. Chad is there. All over us, surrounded by Francophone countries, and the Sahel is heating up. If we don't do anything, when the Sahel falls, it is Nigeria that everybody is interested in. Because they believe Nigeria is huge, Nigeria is big, Nigeria is rich.
If you believe Nigeria deserves secure borders and a safe society, share this video. Until we fix our borders, we can't fix our nation. Like, subscribe, and watch the next episode, where we dive into agriculture and food security. Because a safe Nigeria still means nothing if Nigerians go hungry inside.